Dr. Lori Whatley is a clinical psychologist with over 25 years of experience. She has worked with thousands of clients, both domestic and international. As a thought leader in her field, she has been featured in Inc. magazine, Yahoo News, ESPN, Business Insider, plus many others. Dr. Lori obtained her doctorate magna cum laude from California Southern, her master's from Mercer Medical School, and her undergraduate from the University of Georgia. Despite her success and rising personal brand, her two children continue to be her greatest achievement. Welcome, Dr. Whatley. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm very excited. Okay, so people just heard your bio, so I just wanted to dive right in and just see if you can tell us anything else not in your bio about why you do what you do, and just take it from there.
All right. Something about me that is not in my bio. Most people who know me know that I love to read. Okay. So maybe 10 years ago, my New Year's resolution was to read a book a week. And I've actually been doing that.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes more. I love to read.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Fantastic. What kind of things do you enjoy reading?
You know, I try to 1 week read fiction, and then the next week read nonfiction. So I try to switch back and forth.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Okay, great. So let's talk about your new book, Connected and Engaged. I'm really, really excited about this topic. I think that we don't really, discuss this enough. I think that technology definitely has a very strong place, but just the other part of your book, it reads, How to Manage Digital Distractions and Reconnect to the World Around You. So why did you write this? I think I already know why, but why did you write this, and what is the book about, and why should people read it?
That is a great question. So I wrote this because when I was getting my doctorate, I really wanted to study something that was very relevant and that I would use. And this was quite a while back, and it was interesting because every day into my office, my clients were bringing problems that always were tied into digital device usage. Maybe a child had problems concentrating, the parents couldn't figure out why. As I peel back the layers, I found that the child was online all night and the parents, didn't realize it. And, or maybe I had a couple I was working with and they were having relational problems, and, she felt dismissed because he was always on his phone texting. And vice versa. It works both ways. So those sorts of things were coming into my therapy room, and I said, hey, I'm going to need solutions. I'm going to need a path to help people find their way through this. And so I started researching and just was like, whoa, this is relevant information that I need to share with the world. And so my first, my doctoral dissertation became a book. It's on Amazon, The Effects of Texting on the Marital Relationship. So It was basically my whole project and all the statistics and research that I gathered for it. Kind of, lots of statistics. I decided I wanted to write something later that was more user-friendly.
Okay.
Not quite so academic. So that's when I wrote Connected and Engaged. Okay. And it's more relevant, I think, without so many of the statistics.
Okay, very interesting, because I do notice that you can go out to a restaurant and you can maybe either your table or the table next to you, and you look and you see both people or all people with their heads down staring at their phones. And I read this meme a while back, and I thought it was really profound, very simple but very profound, of these are really great devices. They are really great at connecting people who are really far away, but also disconnecting people that are right next to you. And that just really resonated with me, because I I remember a time before you were texting all the time when you just actually picked up the phone and called. It was like this big thing. So it definitely has a place. Like, we don't have to worry about long distance calling anymore, really, like that. Now with Zoom and, things of that nature, you can connect with people all over the world. So, when it comes to device usage, like, how much is too much?
Oh, that is a great question. And you made a good point. Kind of our new world position, because I've noticed this is not just like in our country, it's everywhere. When I travel, I see heads down, fingers scrolling everywhere. So that's kind of our new world position.
Yes.
And I think that the way for us to decide how much is too much, and I agree with you, technology is a wonderful thing. I have clients all over the world. I would not be able to interact with those clients if it weren't for technology. But the key is this: the key is balance. And so balance is significant for every element of our life. If we're unbalanced, that's when we have emotional issues or physical issues. And so we want to balance our digital device usage.
Definitely. I definitely see that. And I definitely see how it's also an addiction. And it's one of those things that's kind of hard to gauge, just like with anything in terms of human behavior, because, sometimes there's a need for it. Like for you and I, we're entrepreneurs, and you get to connect with all these different people. But at the same time, we just we take it a little too far. We think that just because we don't use our technology as much as another person, then we think it's fine. So I'm just gonna, tag along on our last point, which is, how do we know, like, how do we gauge when it's addictive? Because I personally notice that sometimes I'll reach for my phone 5 minutes after I already looked at it. I don't even know what I'm looking for. It's just habitual. So what is your take on that as a therapist?
Well, I think one way that we can gauge is by seeing how we feel. And when I was doing research for my doctoral project, I did use myself sometimes. And one day I decided I was going to go to the grocery store without my phone. Ooh. And I purposely left it at home. Honestly, I was so anxious, felt so much anxiety, even felt those phantom vibrations, like, oh, did I feel it in my pocket buzzing? Maybe I did. Somebody's felt completely lost. I was only gone 30 minutes. So I decided, okay, this is an indicator that I have a problem. And so then I just said, the next day when I left to run errands, I left it for an hour. And really, I had to detox, and I make myself put my phone away for a certain amount of time every day. And the reason that I know that I am addicted to it is because of what I feel like when I am not attached to it.
Ooh, that right there, that to me, I never even thought about that part when I was even asking it. But I have had those moments where, and it's very few and far between, those moments, like maybe once or twice a year, where you forget your phone. You're not even deliberate about it.
Right.
And you are just
lost,
losing it. You feel like you've lost like part of, like, I don't know, like a limb almost.
An appendage.
Yeah, it really is. But that's actually, and I never even associated that feeling with addiction.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, the way that addiction works, that thing that we try to distract ourselves, addiction is about escapism. So we are trying to escape something that does not feel good inside of us. And usually we're reaching for something that is not healthy, right? So when we reach for it and we get that hit of dopamine in our brain, the like button on social media. I don't know if you've heard the man that invented that, but he's really been out talking a lot about it lately. And he talks about how it was intentional that this button, this like button, we get a hit of dopamine in our brain, which is the feel good chemical, every time we see a like. Now, so we just keep going back. Some people, they say that they catch themselves posting something, and then in 10 minutes they look back, how many likes did I get? And they look back again, because they get a hit of dopamine every single time that they see a like. And that is how we are programmed by big tech to keep coming back for more and more, because that's how they make their money. The longer they can keep us engaged, the more money they make.
Wow, I didn't even think about that part, but absolutely. And then what about for people who, what's the response to when people don't get as many likes as they want? What happens there?
Great question. And imagine that it is exactly the opposite. So, it causes depression. It causes, it causes people to feel bad about themselves. And, I think we don't realize what an impact it has on the younger generation that is not developed enough and doesn't have the judgment that we have as adults to be able to know how to manage social media and what they see on there and what they experience on there. And so that thing that we're handing our children is programming them in a way that is not in benefiting them.
Right. It's not healthy, because I grew up without technology. So I remember like kind of the evolution a little bit of the cell phone and it becoming this thing that is basically a mini computer. So
right.
That's really, really interesting. What about technology assessment, like to determine like how you interact with your devices? Is that the same thing, or is that something more?
I actually have come up with two, one for businesses and one for families and individuals, and it's on my website and it's free. So I always, whenever I do these podcasts and radio shows or whatnot, I always invite people to go to my website, take the assessment, and you can email me straight from there if you have a question about it. It's free, and it's a wonderful measure of how you're affected by your device usage.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that. So I'll definitely be posting your website in the bio, so we can definitely make sure that people are able to go to the site and just kind of check that out, because I think that we know that it's an issue, but we just kind of we'll watch a program like this and then we'll just go back to regular everyday life within 24 hours. So I think that it's really important that we stay connected and engaged to our relationship.
Absolutely.
To technology in general, because you have your relationship, to your relationships, and you have your relationship to your device, and it all, like how you said, it's all inside. Just the fact that to deliberately leave your phone at home. Growing up, we left our phones at home all the time.
Right, absolutely. And the interesting thing is we cannot confuse an in-person connection with a digital connection. There is no comparison. They're not the same. But never before have we lived in an age where we're so controlled and manipulated by technology.
That's true. I love that, because I've actually talked to a couple of friends about that, where, I feel like we're close, and I feel like once you establish a relationship in person, you can somewhat maintain that connection through any medium. But at the same time, you know, when I think of close friends, I think of friends that I see
Right.
in person, that I spend time with in real time, where
Yeah.
you're building memories. And I was actually talking with a friend that we've known each other for a few years. And I said, you know, I don't know. I just don't feel connected. I feel disconnected. She's like, what do you mean? You know, you're my person. Like, you're one of my closest friends. And, you know, we almost never hang out. And I'm like, exactly.
Yes, in-person connection. We don't realize the touches, you know, the hugs, the eye contact. We don't realize what that does for us physiologically. It brings our limbic system down. It helps us feel more peaceful and calm. So we're missing that when we're online, because we know that too much online time causes stimulation to our brain, which even interrupts our sleep. So, which then causes anxiety. So it's like a rabbit hole.
Oh, it is a rabbit hole. Yeah, it's just like this constant cycle. And I've really tried to be more mindful in the morning that if I am going to be using my device, it's going to be more like to play my affirmations and, you know, things like that, that just sort of keep me centered and, you know, still disconnected a little bit from the outside world and really just focusing on what's going on inside. So,
you know, well over 80%, closer to 90% of us pick up our phone first within 5 minutes of waking up in the morning.
Sure.
And, you know, the way you begin your day is the way your day goes. And it sets the pace for the day. And let's just face it, there's not a lot of happy stuff online right now.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, we have to be so mindful. I like that word you used. So mindful and intentional about putting our phone in another room at night. We know that just having it in the room with us can interrupt our sleep patterns.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, it's so easy to reach for our phones first thing, especially I have my alarm on my phone.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, you know, it's so much better when you reach for a person that's next to you, or you reach for a pet that you have, or you reach for a book. Those things we know are much healthier. I saw a meme recently that said tech is the new cigarette as far as addiction. And, you know, when cigarettes first came out, you know, they built them up as being so good for us. They were great for us. And of course, now we know that according to the label on them, that they cause cancer. And so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I definitely find that very, very interesting because, you know, you also want to look at things like the electromagnetic frequencies that, you know, are coming through the phone and how unhealthy that is and how that can interrupt sleep patterns and all kinds of different things. So I think that's really important to note too. Literally, I did an experiment last year because I had major issue, not with sleeping, I had major issues with getting up in the mornings. And I just was not inspired to get up in the mornings. And while I won't really attribute that to technology being a reason behind that, what I will say is that what I did to break myself of that habit was that I plugged in my phone on the floor next to the door, so that when the alarm went off, I would literally physically have to remove myself from the bed instead of just reaching over and swiping snooze.
Yes.
Even that caused me anxiety. Just I couldn't just reach for it right there.
Yes.
And I find that so fascinating because you just really, we're so technology dependent, and just the slightest, it's like a separation anxiety from the
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I just sort of named like a small thing that you can do, but what are some other small things that people can do to like break their device addiction, you know,
Right.
that can make a big difference?
There are so many. I love not looking at the phone for the first 2 hours after you wake up in the morning. You know, getting up, having a peaceful routine, maybe doing your mindfulness, going for a walk, sitting, having a cup of coffee, interacting with people in your environment, is just a really good way to bring your limbic system down and start your day out in a positive way. Which is, you know, what we all want. Another one is, you know, I just saw a statistic that over 40% of us look at our phones in the middle of the night. And, you know, once you start down that path, if you wake up, you can't sleep, you look at your phone, you know, that stimulates your brain in a way and, you know, interrupts your sleep patterns. So then
Sure.
going back to sleep and remaining asleep becomes very difficult. And sleep is essential. It's essential for us. We don't realize how important the role that sleep plays in our life is. And so that's why I say putting your phone at night somewhere where you at least can't reach it or hear it is a wonderful thing. Finding a time during the day that you are phoneless or digital deviceless, no screens, is also essential. I think the very best research we can do personally is try this. Try going for a walk. Try spending an hour without your phone in the day and just see what that feels like for you. Now, I will say it's like detox. The first week is going to be hard.
Right.
See how good it feels to be away from your phone. You know, we realize, hey, I do need human interaction. I do need to have real people in my life,
Right.
real input, not just likes on social media. So those are the kind of things we start to notice when we remove our screens for part of our day.
Oh my gosh, that's huge. And I didn't even really think about doing it every day, but I will share this story. I was speaking with a friend and I had watched something similar to like what we're taping right now. And I said that, you know, this one person says, you know, don't look at your phone for the first hour, and then you're going 2 hours. And just her reaction when I said an hour,
Yeah,
but I have to post right away.
I know.
Post. I'm like,
And then I have to see if people liked it so I can get that hit of dopamine that makes me start my day feeling good. But that's kind of like if we eat sugar, you know, we get a false high for a little minute and then we take a dive. And it's the
that's
same.
true. Oh my gosh, that's so 2 hours.
I do. I love, and I will say this, I started out with 1 hour. I liked it. It
Yeah.
felt so good that I took it to 2.
And I think when you can also deliberately do it just for whenever, I mean, because I've had situations too where I cracked my screen.
Yeah.
And it was the same anxiety. It was the same, oh my gosh, they can't reach me, you know. And then, you know, I get it, the screen is fixed and it's nothing pressing. You know, there was nothing that I couldn't wait to learn or to find. Hey, how are you doing? What are you up to? Really?
Yeah.
Like I needed that kind of urgency, and it's almost laughable.
Absolutely. And we can use that. How is this going to change my life in 6 months? Well, in 6 months, cracking my screen and being off of it for a few hours while it's fixed really probably isn't going to affect me. But learning to be without it for an hour or two every day is going to affect me in 6 months. I'm going to have less anxiety. I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to be more focused. My relationships are most likely going to be better. I cannot tell you how many people come to me and say, wow, I really wish that my partner was not always online or on their screen or watching TV or, you know, any kind of screen. So now the other person in our relationships is a screen. You know, the big competition is a screen.
Yes. Okay. Well, that definitely like is a great lead in for my next question about how can device addiction affect all of our, you know, relationships, like friends, family, you know, romantic partners. Like, how does that, you know, how does that play into it? Because I know me personally, I had a relationship where, you know, it wasn't the phone, but it was TV. It was just TV. And it was just a lot. Oh, I've already seen this episode of CSI. Well, why are you sitting there watching it again then? So that's my tidbit.
I want to say, I know I sound just like a therapist when I say this, but how did you feel when someone that you cared about was so focused on that screen and not focused on you?
Frustrated, annoyed. Yeah. Like, why would you rather watch that same episode that's not even that good, or you already know what's going to happen, than to connect?
So that is the perfect example of what we feel like when other people are distracted by their screens in our presence, and how it affects us relationally. Let's look at it from the aspect we just did of partners, relational partners. Let's think of it in terms of our kids. So I'm a mom, my kids get in the car for carpool, which, by the way, is like the best time of day for parents to, you know, your kids, they're stuck in the car with you. You can get so much good time in with them and learn so much just listening to them in the back seat, talk to their friends about their day. But so many kids get into the car with their parents, their mom, and I'm guilty of this. Believe me, I'm guilty of this. My kids will tell you. Their mom is on the phone, she's texting or she's talking, or they get in the car and those little TVs on the back seats, you know, they immediately turn on the TV. There's no interaction. Everybody's on their screen. You're missing valuable time that you could be interacting. But the message that it gives our kids is, my mom doesn't have time for me. She's more interested in whatever's going on, you know, online or on the phone, or on her screen. And it does cause our little people in our lives to feel very dismissed and sad.
Definitely. I can see that. I mean, that's a great lead in also for my next question, which is like, how can we help our kids, you know, to, you know, manage technology and, you know, like just navigate like a sense of, you know, feeling of confidence and feeling valued, you know, especially like when it comes to, well, when it comes to phones, but also as it pertains to social media?
Yes. Well, that's another good question. I know we're going to talk about attachment today, but you know, attachment, if you look at Bowlby's theory, and I want everybody to go Google Bowlby's theory, so they realize how their primary relationship with their parents, how that past relationship affects us in the present. And so how it causes anxiety for some of us. So imagine a child that is feeling not considered, or maybe not a priority for their parents, how they might go to social media, and how they're already feeling bad about themselves. They start to compare themselves to others on social media. They get bullied on social media. They're not developmentally ready to know how to manage that. Or maybe there's someone bad on social media who is willing to give them attention. And that is so dangerous. So we have to consider that, and we have to know that as parents, it's our job to keep our kids safe. It's our job to parent them. And right now, I didn't have to do this. My parents didn't have to do this. They didn't have to parent me through social media. It's a new and very scary world out there, and my hat's off to these parents. It takes, you know, it's a whole nother dimension of parenting that they're having to consider. But it is very important to monitor what your child is doing online.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, okay, so you talked about Bowlby's theory, and I'm very, very passionate about attachment styles. It's something that it applies to everyone in some way, shape, or form, and no one is 100% one or the other. And I
Right.
think that a lot of people, have this perception, even when it comes to mindset, fixed versus growth. Well, with certain things you're growth and certain things you're a little bit fixed. So as it pertains to attachment styles, I found for me personally, like growing up, my mother was a total bookworm. Like she loved and loved and loved to read, which was great and healthy. But at a certain point, even
Yeah.
sometimes like waiting, just waiting for our food at a restaurant, she would be sitting there reading her book.
Right.
And I would try and talk, and she was just like, oh, I'm trying to read. We
Yes.
just left the library. Why do you need to read? And what that showed for me, like I see how that has shown up in my life of when I feel like people aren't making eye contact, or just that kind of feeling of, not really feeling like you're connected to the person in front of you because they're on this thing. So, I mean, for her, it was a book and not a device. But
Right.
how do attachment styles now, as it pertains to social media, technology as a whole, how does that developmentally, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but just tell us a little bit more about, what people need to be mindful of.
think I think it's important for you to think, that book is no different than a screen, in that what was the narrative that you told yourself about yourself when your mom was, and I'm a bookworm, so I totally get that. We get into our books and we're like, oh, but the people who raise us, our parents, this isn't about blaming them because they're
Right.
human. And
Right.
this was probably the way they were parented. But
Right.
it's more about trying to understand why
Yes.
we are the way we are and how our past is present right now. And
Mhm.
so really noticing the narrative up here for you and
Mhm.
how that narrative is affecting you in your relationships and in your life in general. And so, yes, that feeds into attachment. And, we can be anxiously attached. There's avoidant attachment. There's a lot of different kinds. It depends on the expert that you talk to about it. Some believe there's only 4, others believe there are more. Or secure attachment. And basically, I want you to think of it this way. This is always, I think, a good narration of this. So you're a baby. Let's say your family has 4 people in it, and you're the baby, and your mom has a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a new infant. And so she's trying to manage the others. You're in your crib. You are crying because you have a wet diaper and you're hungry. And what is the story you're telling yourself while your mom is over here trying to get this child out of the fish aquarium and this child over here from jumping in the swimming pool, and she's distracted and she doesn't get to you for a while,
Right.
and you're becoming more and more uncomfortable. Well, that if that goes on long term, you begin to feel dismissed, which is normal. And so you might become an insecure attacher, because that relationship with that primary caregiver carries over. And in our adult relationships, we are unconsciously, and over 90% of what we do is unconscious. We're unconsciously attracted to someone like the caregiver that we have the least connection with, because we're always trying to repair that damage.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? That's like so interesting. And so many, I work with a lot of couples. So many couples that I work with, they're like, oh my word, are you telling me that I married my dad? He doesn't look like my dad, but now that you mention it, he does make me feel like that.
Yes, I know. I think that is so, so huge. I think the more that we can become conscious of, again, just how you're saying with the phones, of how it makes us feel, we can really kind of have a better sense of awareness of how we can change and rewrite that narrative. Okay, I'm feeling a certain kind of way, like when boyfriend or husband, whoever, is watching television, the same episode as when mom is sitting reading a book in the restaurant. And I go back to that. And it's just so fascinating because it really helps you open up a dialogue and really to articulate your feelings in a way that are more understood, but also the relevance of the situation. It's not just about the feeling, right? It's also about the experience.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing you mentioned, consciousness. And so once we become conscious, and even when we're conscious of the way we use our digital devices, if we're an avoidant attacher, we might use our digital device to avoid that partner that is in the room that we really don't feel like we want to attach with. And we may not even be conscious of this behavior. But when we become conscious, then, we know what we know. And when we know what we know, we can do better. And we can be intentional about making positive changes if we want to.
Right, if we want to. We have to want to, and we have to be also willing to hold ourselves accountable and be held accountable too.
Truth.
Definitely. I love that. That's so great. So when it comes to, I love how you talk about attachment styles. So when it comes to conflict resolution, I want to take it a step further. So I noticed for me personally, when I am texting, I text like how I talk in real life. It's the same mood. And sometimes you have people who have these feelings of keyboard courage, and they're protected by their screen and they don't have to look at you. And then all of a sudden you see this whole other different side and you go, who are you? And where have you been hiding? And I notice sometimes, like, if you do try to address it with certain people, depending on the personality type, right, you get this sort of dismissive sort of thing of, oh, you read it wrong, or oh no, I just wasn't feeling good. Kind of the same excuses that people use in person. How do you navigate that? Because I know that definitely goes into attachment style theory as well when it comes to conflict resolution. Can you, in a healthy way, implement conflict resolution over technology, or is that the moment where you just have to put the device down?
Yeah, I think that is part of the problem with conflict is we do try to resolve and online, and that never works well because, I experienced something completely different than you. And, I love how you talked about the keyboard warriors, this anger in this person that they didn't even realize was there, that they were not conscious of, that is part of the negative impact of technology. This little monster comes out because they feel safe behind their screen. And maybe that's some friction that they have all the time with you, but they weren't willing to share that or feel safe to share that in person. But we really, really, and I talk about this a lot in my first book, The Effects of Texting on Relationships, we really need to just use technology in relationships for logistical reasons, like, hey, what time are we meeting? Hey, do you want to have lunch? I'll meet you on the corner at noon, that sort of thing. But, so much can be lost in a text message about emotions.
Yes.
And, we might read each other wrong and just completely collapse the relationship. So I always recommend not trying to resolve serious relational problems online.
Oh, I totally agree, because at the end of the day, it's about the in-person connection anyway. It's not about, oh, well, I forwarded you this meme, or I DM'd you, and it's like, yeah, I mean, that is part of interacting, but it's definitely, again, I just really feel like I need to really drive home the point to people is it is not a substitute for in-person connection.
So true. Yeah. And that's when we begin to really have problems, when it becomes a substitute.
Yes, exactly. I love that. That's because that's what I was already feeling, but I'm always curious to get an expert's opinion on something, because you've seen so many cases like this on a regular basis, and obviously it's inspired you to write a book that actually helps people become more aware of what they're doing and the subconscious why, the 90%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us, how, Dr. Lori, do you and your family manage, your social media and technology?
Well, I will tell you that as I've learned more and more in my own research and in the research of other experts in this area, I have become even more interested in sharing. And of course, I share with my family whether or not they like it. In fact, I will say this: the other day, my daughter was talking to someone about raising children. She just got married. She doesn't have children yet. And she said, my mom didn't let us watch television. And I don't watch television now.
Oh, wow.
My husband watches TV, and it's simply because I'm a bookworm. So if I have 30 minutes, I want to have my nose in a book. So it's not for any reason other than that. It's just my preference.
Yeah.
As anything, I think there's some good stuff on TV. There's also some bad stuff. So, but I really was very conscious of the way my children were being programmed. And, just like you wouldn't invite a dark personality into your home that had bad habits to be around your children, it's no different than sitting them in front of a screen if there is some sort of darkness there that is programming them.
Yeah.
So I was just so sensitive to that. So I decided that I wasn't going to let my kids watch TV. And I heard my daughter tell someone the other day, we didn't grow up with TV. Mom wanted us outside climbing trees, playing games with each other, and playing with our friends. And I am going to do that with my kids. And I was like, oh my goodness, I did something right. I mean, I just felt so good about that, because I don't want my grandchildren to be in front of the television constantly or on their devices. I see, and you mentioned this earlier, I'll be out at a restaurant and I always see my family looking at each other like, oh no, mom's getting triggered over there. I'll see these families with these young toddlers. They come in and they sit down to have a meal, and they hand them all a screen to entertain them. And I'm like, oh no, don't do that. You're missing. We know from research that families that have one meal a day together, they grow up to develop into more stable adults. The children that are raised in homes, and it's because they're connecting and they're engaging in real life. Parents are missing a wonderful opportunity when they hand their kids a screen at dinner.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember growing up, we had a lot of family meals at the dinner table. And I noticed when, I don't remember what age, but I remember there being a difference between that and when we started all kind of plopping down in front of the TV. And I don't know, we still talked, but it was different. And I remember my grandmother, she was, very old school, Southern belle. Let's sit at the table. I'm sitting at the table, and we would go and we would sit.
Good for your grandma.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh yeah. I mean, this is nice. I do remember doing this more, and she was the one that was sort of like the matriarch of the family that just was all about that sense of community, because she remembered a time before TV.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a good thing. Good for your grandmother. That's why you turned out so wonderful.
Yeah, I think so. But I think that it's so easy, like just even with, different generations that grew up without technology, they're starting to kind of adapt to this whole if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing, and just sort of fall right into that. And so I think it's just really good the more people can hear this message, because again, this would be an example of positive technology, right?
Right.
Of being mindful, but
Yes.
to take it outside of watching 1 or 2 episodes, or take it outside of the book and actually apply it to, everyday life.
Parent, if you wonder, same theory that we talked about with us, but if you wonder if your child is seeing too much technology or involved or engaging in too much, try to remove it from their life and see what happens. That's a perfect measure. I don't know if you've ever been out in public and seen a child pitch one of those tantrums. It's not pretty. And that means even more that you are doing the right thing by removing that technology, because they are totally addicted to it.
I love that, because I have friends that, when, even pre-COVID and all of that, just once we were there with each other, we could spend hours together and we barely touched our phones. It was more of like, oh, well, what time is it? Is the movie starting yet? Do we need to, but it was never this central thing of where, oh yeah, what are you saying? Okay, I'm scrolling.
I have a client in New York pre-COVID. Isn't it funny how now everything is pre-COVID, post-COVID? But this client was, she was talking about feeling disconnected and lonely. So I started looking into some of her behaviors, and I found out that she took a break every day and she went down to the coffee shop in her building. And she said, I'm like, well, what do you do when you're waiting in line? And she's like, well, I just, look through my phone, look at social media stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, today I want you to leave your phone on your desk. And when you go down there, everybody else is going to have their head in their phone, but you're not. And I want you to make eye contact with some of these people. And I want you to do that. And I want you to come back and tell me what that felt like for you. Well, the first day it was like, that was scary to actually look at someone else, like make eye contact. But then the second day she was like, this person smiled at me. It like, I made eye contact, this person smiled at me. On the next day, like I talked to someone in line behind me. Maybe they forgot their phone, and we were both just talking, and we ended up actually becoming friends down the line.
Wow.
We worked in the same building. We both were, and I was like, yes, this is wonderful. This is a perfect example of what can happen when we're not heads down, finger scrolling.
Oh my gosh, that's so relevant. And I noticed even getting on elevators and things like that, no one's talking to anyone. And now with COVID, I feel like it's so much easier for people to just default to looking at a screen, because now it's like we're all face masked up. And yeah, and it's just like you can't. I mean, and I don't want to say that you can't, because I feel like where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
But I feel like we still have an even bigger moral responsibility to connect. Even, I don't care. I mean, maybe I'll just start winking at people. I don't know. Like, I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression, but.
You are so beautiful. That might cause a real major when you start winking at people. I'm sure there are many that would love to be winked at by you. But I want to tell you that we know that it affects us physiologically when a beautiful woman like you winks at someone. It raises our immune systems. We should be thinking about these sort of things right now. Our immune system is not going to be improved when we are looking at our digital devices. Right. Our immune system is going to be improved when I'm out and you smile at me. That gives me a little hit of oxytocin and dopamine, those feel-good chemicals, and can actually, raise my immune system. Though that is a very important point.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. I love that. So yeah, I'll just have to tread lightly with that. I'm just trying to think of a substitute, since, you can kind of have smiling eyes to a point, but at the same time, there was something about smiling and saying, hi, how are you? And now it's like, Hi, how are you? Like, are you
And
talking to me?
yeah, and you know, we also know that just smiling, lifting the corners of our mouths, so do this behind your mask, smile, can also raise your mood chemistry in your brain.
Yeah, I try to implement that, especially if I'm doing something maybe on the computer. I just try to be mindful of that so that I'm not just so serious all the time, you
Right,
know? Yeah.
right,
So just because you're focused doesn't mean that you have to be so serious. You can
right,
still be
right.
smiling.
So if you're sitting there, smile. You will notice a very subtle lifting of your mood. People
Oh,
might
totally.
go, "What are you smiling at?" But I do it. I smile around the house, especially if I'm upset about something or I'm feeling down, or I will smile. And my family's like, "Why is mom smiling? Just walking down the hall. Why is she
Oh,
smiling cleaning up something that her dog did?" You know, it works.
there you go. I love it. I love it. So let's see here. So, how do we overcome this strong pull, to compare our lives to other people? Because I know I have personally felt some major insecurities when I'm seeing certain people posting online and they have these fabulous, fabulous lives. And I'm feeling like, yeah, my life doesn't match your life. And so what do we do to like stop doing
Well,
that?
first, I want to say that comparison is the thief of joy. And that's one reason that social media has become harmful because, I tell people everything you see on Facebook is not real. I never post
Mm,
anything. I don't post all the bad things in my life on there. No one does. Who's going to do that? Who wants to look at that, right?
right.
And so I tell people, think of it as like a fairy tale when you're on social media and you're scrolling through and you're going, "Oh, it's Christmas Day and I am here by myself," and they're with that beautiful family that they have. You know, we that nothing about that is going to raise our spirits or help us feel good. So we want to be really, really mindful. Social media controls the population of our world. It does,
Yes.
and so much of what we see on there is not real. We know that fake news is shared on there 6 times more often than actual news, and that could be the news of what you're doing that day, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I've seen some memes where people are, doing something exciting, and then it was all staged. A lot
Oh,
of what
wow.
we see on there is staged, but our children are not developmentally ready to understand that.
Mm,
They don't have the capacity you and I do. They don't have the experience that we have to be able to say, "I'm glad it looks like she's doing great, but is that real?"
wow. I love that because it really illustrates the point that, how we've done it for so long when it comes to television or even just a commercial, like, wow, like that is like some really exciting stuff that happens when you open up a can of soda, and you're sitting there on the couch with yours like, okay. But then when you look at social media and you see people so happy, you're like, well, this is real.
Yeah,
It's real.
yeah. It's marketing. It's marketing.
It is. It so is. That's so interesting. So, let's say, okay, so when it comes to technology, okay, when it comes to social media, is social media really the problem, or is it kind of distracting us from things we don't want to look at?
Probably. Just like, you know, if I have a bad day, the thing I reach for. We all have the thing we reach for to make us feel better, that escapism that I mentioned to you. I reach for a book. Some people reach for social media. The problem is a lot of disinformation is spread online. So if you're feeling bad already, and then you pick that up and you see something that's not real, then it might even make you feel worse. So then you go down that rabbit hole, or then you just keep scrolling for more and more and more until your mood is completely shot and you don't even realize that this is happening. You know, tech shapes the way that information is given to us, and we're manipulated and we're controlled by it. We know that. The tech experts have talked about that. I talk about it from a little bit of a different standpoint, in that I see it in people's human behavior and their responses, and I see it when someone brings their child to me who is anxious or who can't focus, and so I see the effects of it.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So before I ask my last question, where can people find out more about you and your work, and where can people find your book?
So my book is on Amazon, and also if you go to my website, drloriwhatley.com, there are other buttons that you can go to find my book as well. But there's just a lot of information there on the website that I've shared here with you that you can see in print, a lot of content about that. And also ways to connect with me if you want to know more about this or whatnot. I also am on social media. So I do have a presence there, because you can't have a book right now without having a presence on social media.
Very true.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on Instagram.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'll make sure that I post that. And so for my final question, what keeps you inspired?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. I think being inspired is so important for all of us, and it's different for all of us. So becoming conscious about the thing that inspires you is very important. It's a very important element of our lives. But I'm inspired by curiosity. And I'm very curious about many things. That is what led me to this whole topic that we've discussed today, was my curiosity to understand exactly how our screens are affecting us in our relationships, in our individual lives. And I'm also inspired by knowledge. So those two work very well together. And then, of course, sharing it, because it's like, why would I want to keep all of this wonderful information to myself?
Definitely. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and joining us. I really have appreciated our conversation, and I will definitely be, reaching out to you again when we, maybe do a follow-up episode. I think that this content and this conversation is just very helpful to people, and it helps give them some, insight into why they do what they do, so that the next time, before they just impulsively make a decision, that they're just a little bit more conscious about how they're feeling. Because I think that it's really helpful, even for me, just to realize how it's so easy to reach for something outside of you to feel, period. So I appreciate that. I think it was really helpful for me. So I know anything that's helpful for me is going to be helpful for others. So again, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.